hang around at enough auctions and car shows, you're going to hear the words Restomod an awful lot. And I think this 1967 Corvette is pretty much the definition of Restomod. It's a pro-built Jeff Hayes Customs 1967 Corvette. But as a matter of fact, there's really not a lot of 1967 left. It's a real 1967 Corvette body. It has a genuine Corvette 1967 VIN, but everything else is modern, and there's the word mod. It is a custom chassis with C6 suspension components, an LS3 crate motor called the Hot Cam, and we'll talk a little bit about that once we're on the road and it'll be readily apparent. But this is $250,000 worth of state-of-the-art Restomod technology. A Corvette that captures the greatest look of the past and delivers modern performance and comfort on a level they probably couldn't have even imagined in 1967. Let's go for a ride. Before we jump behind the wheel, I thought I'd show you the heart of the beast. Instead of a 427 or a 327, under the hood of this incredible Restomod beats a modern tech LS3 GM crate motor. Rated at about 500 horsepower, it's called the Hot Cam, and it idles like it's an L88. Of course, it's all modern fuel injection, state-of-the-art coil-on plug ignition, serpentine drive, and all the accessories, air conditioning, power steering, and massive Z06 spec disc brakes at all four corners. You'll also note Jeff Hayes' exceptional craftsmanship. The engine bay is painted kind of a satin silver to contrast with the beautiful graphite paint on the outside. And you can see that awesome radiator shroud up front that ties it all together and really dresses the engine up beautifully. Add in a polished aluminum intake manifold that was fabricated from scratch. These awesome Corvette script valve covers, which are purely decorative over the coils. And you get one of the most beautiful engine bays that's designed with form as much as function in mind. Let's slide behind the wheel and take a spin. The cockpit of this Corvette doesn't seem that much different from most 67s until you start to look a little closer. First off, there's this gorgeous red leather upholstery that was done with absolutely incredible workmanship. The French seams, and I wish you could smell it because it's just amazing in here. It's so fragrant. The gauges look a lot like standard 67 Corvette gauges, but they are autometer pieces that do a pretty good impersonation, and they're set into this cool carbon fiber dashboard. Of course, a tilt wheel, state-of-the-art stereo, and I don't know if you can see it, but there is a touch screen with a backup camera up above, and air conditioning hidden inside the dash. So it's got all the modern conveniences. This particular car is an automatic. It's a 4L70E General Motors, brand new in the box, 4-speed automatic, and I think that's a great choice in a car with this much performance. You want to be keeping both hands on the wheel all the time. And the awesome thing is, and the reason Restomods are so popular and gaining in popularity every year, is simply because they work. Doesn't matter how hot it gets, doesn't matter how hot it is outside, this sucker's gonna start fast, idle properly, and go down the road just like a modern vehicle. I find that kind of extraordinary since I spend all my time with truly old cars, but it's hard to forget this car's origins and trust the hardware. But Jeff Hayes uses proven equipment and brand new components throughout, so the car absolutely runs and drives just like new. Particular car is equipped with side pipes, and you can hear them burbling away out there. It's amazing to me to hear a modern tech fuel injected engine cackling and barking like a 1967 L88. It snarls, it burbles on the overrun, it cackles and barks when you're coasting. It's just awesome. but at the same time there's this perfectly linear power curve that you only get from fuel injection. Throttle response is right now. It snaps to attention instantly. And even if you're just trundling around town, it's happy to do it. It's not going to load up, it's not going to get fussy, it's not going to get overheated. It just works like a car is supposed to work. And that's the benefit of computer technology in a 50-year-old machine. An LS motor doesn't quite sound like an old school big block, but it's certainly got that huge whack of torque at any speed. And like the best restored cars, if you take it easy, it's very mellow. Just trundles right along. There's a nice burble from outside. It's a little louder than a stock Corvette set of pipes would be, I think. But it absolutely sounds fantastic. And I don't think anybody's going to complain. Ride quality is exemplary for a Corvette, old or new. The chassis is custom fabricated. There's no original 1967 Corvette componentry left under there. It's a fabricated tube frame. It uses C5 Corvette front suspension and C6 Corvette rear suspension. C6 Corvette Z06 spec brakes that are as big as trash can lids. A Z06 rear differential with 342 gears. And this quick-witted 4-speed automatic. I keep it in third around town because this car's got so much performance. I mean, it'll go probably 185 or 190 miles an hour flat out, which is extraordinary. But it's so fast and so powerful that you find yourself overdriving it a little bit. You put it in overdrive and suddenly you're going 65 or 70 miles an hour down a residential street. So leaving it in third gives me a little bit more control over it, and it certainly gives it a lot of punch. Very quick on the downshift. And with Z06 spec suspension, you better believe this sucker's a handler. Wow! Gigantic brakes hauling it down. Brakes like that, you'll never find their limits. And you'll probably never get tired of dipping into that horsepower. We're trundling along here at about 45 or 50 miles an hour. The engine's showing about, looks like about 185 degrees. And that's very reassuring, knowing that there's all modern componentry up there. There's a giant aluminum radiator, modern water pump, a huge electric fan that probably pulls more air than a hurricane. So hot days, sitting in traffic, running the air conditioner, okay, it doesn't care. It's going to work just like a factory engineered piece. And unlike a lot of what I call made-up cars that weren't engineered by the factory, the steering is very linear. It's not twitchy, it's not wandering, it tracks extremely well. It's a rack and pinion setup, and despite those mammoth tires, it just rolls down the road ignoring the truck ruts. And I have to admit, one of my favorite things about C2 Corvettes mid-years like this is the view. With the stinger and those lovely, luscious fenders, this is probably the best view in motoring right here. I love the color combination on this car. The charcoal gray is elegant and sophisticated, and a silver stinger on top is a neat inversion of the original look. And I think it really works well. The car's insanely fast, but it's also very elegant and tasteful. It's not screaming, "Look at me," all the time. Although it's pretty hard to miss something like this. Those side pipes get everybody's attention. Add in the gigantic Z06 wheels, which are chrome plated, and you certainly have a car that's very flashy. It's sitting on low profile performance rubber that was custom made with red line sidewalls to give it kind of an old school look. And it really ties this car together. Between the charcoal and the red interior and the red line tires, this sucker just works. And even though those tires are about the same thickness as an O-ring, ride quality is really good. I'm just amazed by how well this car does just about everything. You'll also note there's a factory clock in the center of the dash, which is keeping good time. There's a modern AM/FM stereo radio fitted in the center with the same unusual vertical orientation as the factory piece. And all the gauges are pretty much right in the normal comfort zone. Plenty of oil pressure, still sitting there at about 185 degrees. Is just effortless. I mean, it is just untouchable in terms of performance. You're going to own this car, you're going to go out looking for fights. Because even though it looks old, and even a vintage Corvette is a pretty fast car, there's a difference between old fast and modern fast, and this is definitely modern fast. Transmission cracks off lightning quick shifts. And I know there'll be a bunch of you complaining, oh, if only it was a 6-speed. I would argue that the automatic is a good match for this. And the fact that Corvettes have come standard with automatic transmissions now for nearly 30 years, I think says that General Motors knows their client base pretty well. It certainly isn't a handicap in the performance department. Sucker is ready with a downshift faster than you could yank a shifter into place. And you can hear those pipes cackling away back there. Man, does this thing sound awesome. You can feel the tires squirming around a little bit back there, even though there's about 2 feet of rubber plastering it to the ground. There's more than enough torque to rip it loose, probably in any of the first 3 gears, under 60 miles an hour. You're going to have to be at the top of your game to tame this car. So don't say you weren't warned. This is seriously fast hardware. And as I said, the brilliance of a Resto-Mod is that Jekyll and Hyde personality. Ferociously fast, but here we are trundling along in traffic at 35 miles an hour, and it's perfectly content to do that. There's no bucking, there's no stumbling, there's no carburetor hijinks. Just smooth linear throttle response, and only fuel injection can do that. GM has done a great job catering to the aftermarket like this with standalone harnesses and computers, so that a car like this without a lot of the computerized accessories can still benefit from the latest technology. And I gotta say, I don't care who you are, push rods still make for one hell of an entertaining drive. It's just like a slingshot. And again, even on this fairly rough section of road where a lot of trucks go, It tracks well. It's not beating me up. And kudos to Jeff Hayes and his crew for putting this thing together. Because there are no squeaks and rattles. It feels tight and buttoned down. Doesn't feel like it's coming apart. I'll kick it up into overdrive just to show you. And here we are going about 55, 60 miles an hour, and it's 1500 RPM. It's just loafing along. But if you need or want a little more, just tickle that accelerator. This car will put you in jail if you're not careful. It will blast from 55 to 90 in a heartbeat. The motor is an LS3. 6.2 liters, about 500 horsepower, but it is what GM calls the hot cam. And this thing idles like a vintage L88. It's not smooth, it's not civilized, but boy is it cool. And thanks to fuel injection, I know it's not going to stall, I know it's not going to get fussy. They've replicated the sound and the feel and removed all of the worries. Ordinarily, I'm a purist, but I get restomods like this. It is still the best looking Corvette ever built, and now it has performance to match the best cars of today. Yank it back down into third, just because I like how it sounds. And to be honest, you're really not going to use but 20% of this car's actual performance potential. Its limits are now so high that you're going to endanger half the countryside if you take this car out at 9/10. But boy, having all of that power in reserve, in addition to the brakes, I mean, they're going to detach your retinas, and a built suspension. That's awesome. And you're seeing a lot more restomods. You're seeing companies building full chassis that slide right under these vintage bodies. And I think if you don't have a numbers matching pedigree car and you're missing a lot of parts, that's the way to go. It gives you the best of both worlds. And since you're not worried about a pedigree and matching numbers and all that nonsense, you're free to get a little bit creative. I like that this car respects the original design. They didn't add spoilers or flares. But as with the interior, it's just beautifully polished. Fit and finish is exceptional. This is better built than any Corvette coming off the assembly line has ever been. And I suppose for $250,000, it better be. But it's so easy to drive, and I'm confident that you could get in this car and go cross-country without a second thought. There's no such thing as a mid-year Corvette that rides this well. Never mind having this much grip in the corners. So I guess I understand restomods. It's all about no compromises. You're creating a car that does everything well. And in the case of a Corvette, going fast is its entire reason for existing. So I don't see any reason why you shouldn't make it faster. but making it more civilized at the same time, I can get behind that. I'm extremely impressed with Jeff Hayes and his crew and the work they do. And this is one heck of a machine that delivers everything you would expect based on its looks, its price tag, and oh boy, that soundtrack. Thanks for taking a ride with us. We'll see you next time.